when I say record on Zoom, it records to the local system, which is nice. I get an MP4 file, and it's awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you for putting up with the shenanigans. Unfortunately, Zoom kind of won this one. Thank you, Zoom, for not failing us. We'll keep looking at Jitsi, but Jitsi was, I've had better experiences with Jitsi than I just had, but this was definitely the worst one I've ever had. I think the main thing that we need to talk about is what is currently being typed in right now, which is our CEP Google Doc. We have, here, I'm going to put this in the chat so everyone can see it if you don't know where it is. It just kind of get everyone up to speed and on the same page. What I've heard, and this is when Ben and I built this scaffolding for CEP2, that was really just like we're trying to gather together everyone's thoughts and put them in one place. The intent, I think, here is we really need to be clear on like what do we want a Kubernetes operator to do, like from a goaling standpoint. What would be, you know, from a level 1, level 2, level 3 perspective, from the operator framework, what does that look like from a Cassandra point of view? Because when you, and that's the kind of the looseness of that level 1, 2, and 3 terminology, is it really focuses on, you know, just like, well, here's these really loose guidelines, but whatever your technology is, bring your own interpretation of that. So that's the exercise we need to go through. I've already seen some interesting stuff. Like Jordan brought up a really good point is, you know, horizontal scaling, you know, that's just, that's like not level 5 in our world. That's like level 1. That's the way it works. Oh, here's Brandon. So, so that is where we're sitting right now. But some folks have been asking, and I've seen the traffic about this, is what are we going to do once we have this? Like once we outline everything, and I think what I've heard a lot of people talk about in this case is that we want to get to a point where we want to be clear about it, but then be ready for some sort of a donation of code. This isn't going to be, let's just go to a repo blank and start from scratch. And we have a lot of issues with like overlap and who's got what. We can have those debates and that'll be interesting. But I think if we get just a really pure and clean about what we expect out of a Kubernetes operator, it will make the next steps a lot easier. Like, let's not compromise on what we think it should be, even, and not think of like what we have. Like there's a lot of them out there, a lot of operators out there that have certain features. Great, but what do we really want to make sure that we're clear on that? Because it's clear that there's a lot, all the operators have a little bit of difference to them. There is no 100% coverage. So what are those? So that's where we're sitting right now. Questions so far or comments?
That sounds about right to me.
All right, cool.
I couldn't hear you if you were trying to say something.
It was really quiet. I did hear him though.
Who are you talking to?
Mr. Dickinson.
Oh. he just said yeah. He put his thumb up.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, where we are right now is we have this Google Doc. I see a lot of stuff put against level 1, hardly anything in level 2, and one thing in level 3. But then there's like level 4 stuff already being added in here, which is kind of cool. which, I think that's the thing. Does anybody, I noticed there's a lot of energy being put into it as we speak. Does anybody want to lead a discussion on the level one requirements right now? Nobody wants to jump in
Sure.
there, huh?
I would say some. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think my computer's audio is just failing over, but let me know if you can't hear me. So when we worked on this, I would say it's mine. I totally agree with the operator frameworks leveling thing for the most part, and I agree that some things with Cassandra are like this leveling is set up for maybe an app like WordPress or MySQL, or I don't, I'm using some pretty generic, really widely known ones, but some very more traditional apps.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say Cassandra is traditional, but in a bunch of different ways, right? Like it has a whole idea of clustering built into the app. So how much Kubernetes do you need to count on? Like less so than something like WordPress, where the uploads need to be like a shared file system, but then it just counts on shared nothing for the MySQL layer. And can it deal with fancy MySQLs, or it just needs a really vertically scaled MySQL? Anyway, where I'm going with this is it's hard to just take some of these decisions and say like, oh, just to get to level one, what do we need? Like you make a lot of suboptimal choices, I'd say, if your goal is to like do this like kind of startup style MVP, where it's like, oh, we just want to replace our Helm chart with an operator. It's like, cool, let's do this. Wham bam, it's done. You have some operator, but you've just made a more bespoke Helm chart, really, and you'd probably start making a lot of the choices more differently if you were going to care about the stuff at level 5, like horizontal scaling, which, like I said, isn't that bad with Cassandra, but just like figuring out like the choices we made, which since now CAS operator is all open source, that's like easy to talk about, but like how we decided to manage seeds, and even the life cycle of the pods, where like the management API comes up, and that's really what the life cycle of the pod is attached to. The node is also that, but like you can bring up the pod and not bring up Cassandra, and there might be legitimate use cases for that, and we don't do that very much, but so there's kind of like different levers and knobs to use. So I agree with the leveling thing, but it's hard to just sort of say like, to achieve level 1 we should do X, because I think you start to make some suboptimal choices.
All right, so I think you've defined the problem pretty well. What do you think is the right answer? And this is why I think of the leveling, is because in things like Operator Hub, this is how it's communicated to someone who's running Kubernetes. Like, this is what this operator can do for you. So how do we communicate that well to someone who's running Cassandra and wants to do it in Kubernetes?
Yeah, so I think, and this was what was interesting, was like before, I think getting the use cases from the the human Cassandra operators, and saying like, so what are the things you need to do when a developer is coming to you and needs a new test cluster? They just need an empty one from scratch. Cool. Oh, do they need to restore backup into it? Okay, let's file that away in our notes. What else do they do? Oh, you have to scale it up for them sometimes. Okay, let's file that away in our notes, and sort of collect those stories and let those stories be prioritized a little bit, and let those color your decisions. But yeah, it's like a big juggling act. Like, I agree with keeping the operator SDK's five T levels in mind, but sort of not the be all end all. I'd say like the use cases of what the human operators tend to do with Cassandra, like the idea of like the full repair, right? Or like, oh, we're going to do incremental repair. It's like, how does the operator get involved in some of these ideas? Does it need to? Anyway.
So Isaac, can I pick on you? If you don't mind.
Go for it.
I'm looking at this cast of characters that is currently on Zoom, and everyone in here has their hand in making an operator and is already converted and a true believer. You're the unique individual here that, you know, you're not doing this, and I think you're looking for, like, do I want to? Can you help us out? Maybe give us more of an operator perspective. Like, first of all, is Bloomberg running Kubernetes? Like, are you a Kubernetes shop, or are you not doing that just yet?
No, we run Kubernetes extensively for our stateless services.
Mm-hmm.
And we've even gotten the Insta-cluster operator running internally for like test databases. So we have quite a bit of experience with Kubernetes itself and Cassandra outside of Kubernetes.
Okay.
So I think I like Jim's point here where he was talking about taking these operator stories of what I as a human am doing every single day and how can we build that into the operator. And then maybe we can go and map each of those operator stories into each of these levels.
What would you, what are some of the things that you're, like, if you were just starting out, you know, you already run Kubernetes for your stateless applications, you're looking for run stateful, meaning Cassandra, and you're evaluating an operator, what are the things that are going to make you want to be like, yeah, I want to use that, or no, I don't want to do that?
So I think the biggest, I mean, obviously the first two, like, can I stand up a cluster really easily? Can I tear that cluster down easily? And can I also expand and shrink a cluster easily, right? So just by modifying my CRD, am I able to, you know, automate a cluster expansion? And that would also include doing things like cleaning up the other nodes in the cluster as well, right? So like running node tool cleanup is like a background process after that. And then another thing here, I know that metrics is under level 4, but I think metrics definitely, and this is when I was looking at the Insta-cluster operator, having the ability to expose metrics via Prometheus is very helpful for us, because now we can start evaluating the performance differences between our clusters that run in Kube and those that we have running on Metal right now.
That's very interesting. So the visibility and measurement is really the monitoring, and that's almost a killer feature.
Yeah, at least for us, because, you know, before we're able to say, okay, let's start putting production clusters, you know, on Kubernetes, we want to know what's the difference between what we have today, and, you know, what kind of things, and especially because we all run, like, we have a Kubernetes as a service team inside of Bloomberg that runs it on bare metal. So there's things that we have to interop with them to figure out, you know, how do we offer storage and how can we improve performance for storage and things like that. And that's where the metrics really help us out.
Do your development teams use Kubernetes in any capacity, or is that more of a last mile problem?
Usually it's offered through some sort of higher level abstraction. So like our app teams at Bloomberg will use Kubernetes through a platform as a service type thing that we're offering internally. For example, like our machine learning engineers run all their, like, serve all their models through Kubernetes, but that's an abstraction away from them. They get an interface that they can use to actually do deployment on Kube.
Is that, I'm sorry, I've been asking a lot of people these questions, but this is really helpful. I mean, if we're going to make an operator that people want to use, we need to understand why people use it, right? And one thing I've noticed is and I don't know if this is 100% true, but would you say the path to adoption for Cassandra Kubernetes starts with your CI/CD, like running it in CI/CD? And it sounds like you are, but I just want to verify, like, if someone was, like, not thinking of the Bloomberg, just thinking more generally, if you were to advise somebody who's trying to move Cassandra into their Kubernetes deployment, what's the steps you would have them take to gain confidence there?
And putting it as part of a CI/CD pipeline, that's the very first thing that I would suggest to do. So having some sort of Jenkins plugin that builds a Cassandra cluster in Kube, and then move to like a development environment. And that's kind of where we are, is we're able to offer a development environment in Kubernetes. If you're an app team and you want to use Cassandra for a little bit of time to do testing, it's just like one-off, like build your application, you can use it there. And then collect metrics in the development environment, and maybe also having like a stress test type environment or staging type environment where you can actually collect metrics about how the clusters perform. Eventually, ultimately leading up into production at that point.
Interesting about the Jenkins plugin.
That's one thing that we're looking to try to offer because we use Jenkins pretty extensively at Bloomberg. So being able to offer a Jenkins plugin that can spin up a cluster for the teams that we have that use Cassandra is one of the things that I'm looking to use Kubernetes for.
Is that a part of an operator, or is that just a separate project altogether?
That would be a separate project that would obviously would use the operator, because it would create an object in like the API server, which would then spin up a cluster.
Let me ask everyone here. I mean, I just listened to what Isaac says, and this is echoing a lot of what I hear. What about making a Jenkins plugin a part of like the level 1 operator? Does that seem weird?
Well, I would say no, but not that it's a Jenkins plugin so much as like we made a client go, we prioritized making sure there was a client dash go plugin, or I don't know. It's code. It's generated code, so it's easy to write any small app that talks to a Kubernetes, has a kube config, talks to Kubernetes, and creates a CastDC instance of RCRD. So it's pretty tightly related, but I don't think it's like the operator itself so much as like, yeah, follow the best practices here. Like, I don't think anyone suggested like, don't make a CRD and, go a very bespoke route. That's how I read it. I don't know. Isaac, you could tell me if.
I mean, a Jenkins plugin would be a great target use case, but maybe not something that you call, all right, part of our level 1 operators, we also offer a Jenkins plugin to go with it. I don't know where an open source Jenkins plugin that leverages this operator would live at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the question I'm asking, because I think of the key here is adoption, people using it. And that's why I'm like, this is kind of a fuzzy area. Like if and I've seen plenty of projects that have things in tree to aid in adoption. Like right now in the project, we're debating bringing the drivers in tree, right? Because that aids adoption. Yeah, a driver is not the Cassandra server, but that's an interesting discussion. It may be out of trees too.
My 2 cents is it should be a separate project, probably, because I don't want to indoctrinate people with Jenkins if they don't have to.
That's a fair point. We're just going to create a whole bunch of sub-projects for Cassandra. How about that? PMC.
I believe that's called an ecosystem.
Yeah. Frank, I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm sorry, I had lots of communication problems, so I've missed most of the discussions. But for me, I don't see any need for any Jenkins plugin. For me, operator just give you a couple of lines and charts to install the operator, and then you have a simple CRD and pops, and there you go. So I think people should be. I mean, that should be the first point. I mean, if you want to add something like a Jenkins plugin, why not? But I wouldn't put it on the operator. it's separation of concerns. And for example, we've stopped using Jenkins altogether. So for us, it wouldn't be interesting, but because you see people can change from one tool. So are you going to make a GitLab plugin or whatever plugin tool?
Yes, there are many CI/CD tools out there. That's true. Circle CI is being used by the project right now. GitHub has their stuff that they're doing. Amazon has a build pipeline. I mean, it is picking Jenkins. You're right. That's a little opinionated, but it's some sort of like, maybe this is part of the community's effort of trying to gain adoption and not part of the project.
I think it's a bet that we are actually doing, because I mean, on our side, we think that people will use Kubernetes environments where you will have your namespace and you will be happy to do things in your namespace, and you get used to just installing Helm charts, imperators, and deploying CRDs and having your stuff deployed. And if you consider that people will have access to a Kubernetes instance, then what you need in your adaptation is, as I said, a couple of lines to install the operator and pop up the cluster. I mean, that's the starting point you need to have when you do the operator. You have to start to think that people will have a Kubernetes instance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on the Cascop side, we've just changed the documentation. It's going to come out soon, and we make it as simple as possible for people to create a cluster, because we had a huge documentation, and we're working on making it much simpler. And I don't know, maybe I'm out of scope here, but you talked about donation in the beginning, and we wanted to say that we would be very happy to donate the code of Cascop. It has nothing that is Orange oriented inside, except the name of the CRD. And we'll be very happy to provide support on the code itself. And so that's, we don't know when to say it, actually, because we don't want to say it before people work, not at the end, but we've always tried to basically, we always taken from the community. We've used Cassandra a lot, and we'll be very happy to donate something back at one stage. So we've done everything in that line of thinking. So there's nothing that is Orange specific in there. And it's, honestly, I've tried to fill up the documents when I felt a bit alone in there. And I said, now if I start to fill a document, I'm just going to copy and paste everything that Cascop does. And that's not fair, because that would be just like, that's what I say I want to do because I'm doing it already. So I stopped, basically. But the problem is, if you take even the level 1, if you say, I just want to spin up a cluster, as you said earlier, for dev purposes, scale up, scale down, okay, that's simple to do. The complicated stuff is when your operation team asks you, so, okay, I've got my stateful set that is stuck because I requested something that Kubernetes can't give me, so what do I do? So you have to include other options to basically unstuck your operator, and that's what we've been doing. And that would be something that I wanted to say the operator should provide you with a mean to unstuck Kubernetes stateful set updates, and say, that's a little bit of an extra for the level 1, but you need it anyway. So, I mean, the more you go in an experience, the more you will add requirements to your operator, and the more difficult and complex it becomes. So, I mean, maybe the answer is a bit too long.
No, I really appreciate your expertise. You guys have been doing this for a long time, and this is really important. And thank you. I mean, I don't think anyone's asked or has come out and said it, but like where donations will be coming from, and that's, you said it. I think and it's recording right now, so you can't take it back.
I mean,
yeah.
I just wanted to say to the dev list, but I say, well, maybe it's too early. Maybe they say, who do you think you are? So I don't know when to say that. We're very, very happy for people to take it. We have no interest in business around managing clusters. So we'd be happy if people use it. We actually work with InstaCluster right now, all together to include backup and restore in Cascop. That's going to come out soon, middle of June, and that we expect it to actually work in production for us. So, and the next step would be to include the management API that the stacks came out with. So we want to include it as well, but we would need help for that. So, okay, we were just waiting to for a moment to say, oh, you can take ours. We would be very happy with that. I mean, just have a look at it. Just consider it. That's what we ask. No, nothing like it may not be good, but it may be good.
That yeah, it's an interesting direction. What I'm really trying to stay away from, if I can, is and thank you, is using this this medium for making decisions. I think the project is like, no, decisions have to be made on the mailing list. But I think it's worth the debate and the discussion for sure. Let me, I mean, I'll just open it up to the floor. Anybody have any questions, comments? I mean, again, we're not making decisions here. That's not what we're here for.
You're not wrong about the mailing list.
Brandon, this time.
Chat. I put it in the chat, but the idea of the donation made me really excited.
It's fantastic news for the community.
Is it? Okay. Oh, we'll be very, very pleased that people just consider it. I mean, and then anyway, that's nice. Thank you.
So Brandon, as the only PMC member currently online right now, what? Yeah, I know. You get it. Sorry. Well, I think that we're getting to the point now. What's going to happen whenever we do need to have a sub? Is it a sub project? Is it a new project? Or do you know if there's like where that's headed, or is this something that happens on the dev list?
I can only give you an opinionated answer there, so I'm not going to.
Wow, you're getting older. I'm appreciating this.
I know, right?
so not Brandon. Okay, no, that's fine. I think this is probably definitely something that needs to be sorted out soon. It's like, okay, what I would hate to see is we all sit around talking about what ifs and never do anything. I know everyone on this call. Well, I'm getting to know Isaac.
So I think like the Jenkins thing, you really have to consider scope, and I would prefer that to be maintained separately because I don't want to maintain that, you know?
The path that we have to go on, and this was very clearly explained to me, was that the CEP has to be finished before any code gets done. So Frank saying, hey, I want to offer this as a donation. I think that's a good thing to put out there for sure, but we really need to get the CEP done. And if it's like in a reasonable form and we put it out there and say, okay, this is what we think. And it gets, I don't know if is there a ratification process or constitutional Congress, or what do we do with our CEP, Brandon?
Well, everything's open source in the end, so.
That's the worst answer. Well, I think if once we declare like the CEP is in a finalized state, then I think we can move on. It's just a simple declaration.
I would honestly have to research that a little bit.
I feel like to get us there, we need to put a date on it. Like this needs to be ratified or agreed upon by the end of the month.
Well, raise a dev thread about that then.
It looks far from being done.
It is indeed far from being done. But I don't think it's that far. I don't think it's that crazy far away.
Yeah, okay.
Frank, I think, and I noticed you said something earlier where you said you were concerned that you would come in there far too opinionated around CASCOP. This is a working document. Go ahead and be an opinionated as you want to be.
I did. I don't know. I was the one who put in the first slide there, and I said that I'm just going to stop because nobody else is editing that document. So I was just wondering if I was editing the right document.
No, don't stop. We're just lazy
Yeah.
or busy, something like that.
Oh, I see Chris has been adding a bunch of stuff in here too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think I just added a whole page worth of content in the past 20 minutes. So my apologies there. I don't think when we get towards implementation details, that's where we're going to be more biased. We're probably going to be in a good spot to discuss what features we're looking for, not necessarily their implementation in this document. And as we get towards the implementation, that's where we can look at what the operators have been doing and come together as a community and be like, this is a solid starting point, or I like what we've done here, or what they've done there, and what so-and-so has done over here, to come up with something that's really going to be for the benefit of all the users, right? So right now, I think is a good time to be opinionated, because it's not about implementation. It's about what is the shape of this operator, and we can move into what's the scope going to be for this first iteration, for the second iteration, so on and so forth. And are some of these things that we're talking about satisfied? And can we build off of the Orange operator and check X number of these off and say, this is done, this is done, this is done. So please feel free to contribute there. I know I am.
Yeah, and are there things we can do to help move this along a little better? And I've thought of a few things, like just sending out a simple like Google form, like list your top 5 things you feel like should be in a level for level 1 in an operator. You know, just give people the most, and I could tweet that.
Please don't do that. Look at how it's played out already.
Hey man,
like
you said people are lazy. All right, I got you. You see where my mind goes when I don't see input, Brandon.
That's fair.
Or just put it on the mailing list. Like, let's have a focused debate on the dev list.
Well, we have to put it on the mailing list, right, to make any kind of decision.
Well, yes, but I'm saying just to stimulate some sort of conversation. Like, here's one focused area, discuss, instead of just go to the Google Doc and put in your ideas.
Yeah, there's actually a vote going on in the PMC about how we handle things like this, and one of the options is having a discuss thread, so I definitely recommend that.
Like, put it in brackets and say discuss?
Yeah, exactly like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Ponymail will figure it out later. Okay. Yeah, I'm willing to put whatever energy I need to make this go work faster. I don't feel like we're too far away from each other on what needs to happen.
Strong +1 on discuss thread then.
Then maybe you should start to have a first version that people can discuss on.
Mm-hmm.
Something simple that we could sort out and then say, okay, that's what we came out, please complete, instead of saying just discuss the subject. Yeah.
Okay. No, I think that's good. I mean, whatever medium we can use to get that discussion going and put the right amount of energy into it. I mean, I think everyone's kind of like, well, what are we going to do here? Let's get moving. We're not getting any younger, right?
Communication is key.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know how much further we need to go. I'm happy to move a discussion over to the mailing list. Anything anybody wants to discuss while we've got everyone here, or topics that need to be raised?
Is the move to the mailing list going to be discussion of the state of the CEP as we've been defining it inside of this Google Doc? Or just discussions in general?
I think Brandon was saying discussions in general should be a discussed thread, like put it in brackets. But in this particular case, we need to have a discussion about the CEP.
All right. I'd love to kind of have a timeline for the, I don't want to say ceiling, but when we feel this CEP will be in a good spot. I'd hate for it to languish for a month or 2 months. I'd love to kind of say, okay, this is the direction we want to take, and then we can start the next step.
Well, that's why we started Discuss thread.
Agreed.
I think it's fair to say, so here's my aspirational statement, and I would love to push back on this, is that I think given the fact that we already have a huge amount of experience with Kubernetes operators just on this call, it's not unreasonable to say if we all focus some effort, we could have this CEP wrapped up in a week or two.
That's kind of a big unknown to me.
Of course it is.
Well, so maybe we should just start with the, on the document, there is already questions, so maybe we should go one after the other and try to answer them now. You see? Because that's the thing, when you got people writing something, someone's asking a question and it's been written, we need to be together to reply, else it's going to take ages to just sort out.
So let me add. All right. So I agree. One of the things, here's an idea that I have, is start a discuss thread on the mailing list. There's a lot of stuff in here, and then so this group will be meeting again in 2 weeks. Okay, so 2 weeks, almost exactly at this time in 2 weeks, because it's moving an hour forward. Let's make the goal for that next one to be to cover every single question. Let's walk through every single question, make sure that we have it clear, and get to a settling place with the CEP.
I think that's a reasonable goal.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't understand the goal, you say? You want to?
So that when we meet again in 2 weeks, that we spend that time, that hour that we have, finalizing, like going over any questions and finalizing the CEP together.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what that's.
Yeah.
Finalizing what we can. I mean, we can even, if we're in a hurry, we can add more meetings.
I'm not opposed to it.
I mean, we like meetings when we progress. I mean, if we see progress, we just want to go forward and finish it. But then you need to think, what are the steps once this is done? Once a CEP is finished, what do we do? I mean, I can send an email with a donation whenever you want. I don't mind. But I don't want it to be bad. I would like it to work, basically.
I think we all do.
Would I wait for the end of the CEP and say, oh, now we finished, and say, you can try that? We need to compare with the other operators. Are we going to go through that comparison phase or not? No. Let's think about that. Maybe I'm too young on the project. I can't say anything except newbie stuff.
I don't know what the timing is there, actually. But yeah, that's why I want to get through this process as quickly as possible so we can start talking about implementation. And implementation equals donation of code. That means understanding the differences. That means actually committing code into a repo that we can all have access to.
And to that end, I think the sooner the better, personally.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, let's get this wrapped up in a week or two. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of reason. This is not like the sidecar, which was kind of something that had to be built from scratch. This is not that.
Anyone can open any repo they want to.
But it's not a part of the ASF repos, right?
Oh no.
That's what I'm thinking about.
Hey, Patrick, this is Dinesh here. Sorry, I joined the meeting late. Just wanted to ask you if we are planning to get a donation for an existing code, did you get a chance to chat with Nate McCall? He's familiar with the process of getting donation. I'm sure maybe Brandon also might be familiar.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Dinesh. Yeah, it's not just committing a bunch of code. There'd be some, make sure we have licensing agreement, like there's parity and things like that.
Yeah, there's some specific processes that ASF outlines that we'll need to follow in order to get a donation. That includes getting sign off from all the people who have contributed into the code repository, getting them to sign the Apache ICLA, and there's some legal checklists that need to be followed. Something to that effect. I don't know exactly what the specifics are there. But getting a donation is distinct, in my opinion, from going through the CEP process. CEP is more of a change. This is like accepting a donation.
Right. That's a good point. Thank you, Dinesh.
Well, we have a long history with trademarks so I imagine we can involve them and they'll figure it out for us.
Okay. So I think where we're at right now is let's so as I understand it, let's continue the discussion on the dev list. I will start a discuss thread today about getting the CEP into a settling place. And then I think soon we will get to the place where it's okay, this is what we want to do. We'll make sure that it's in the wiki. But at that point, Frank, I think you need, if we're talking like you want to donate code, then that's a different thread we now have to get ASF involved in. So let's get through the CEP process now. I really want to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves though, because then we'll run into all kinds of trouble. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
And on time.
Yeah. Isaac, I sent you a message, but I would love to get your email address, and I would just want to talk more about your user story sometime if we can have a chat.
Yeah. I'll send it to you on